Are you ready for another food heist?
Ooh, I am so ready.
There's another food heist. This one is actually an old story, but is it in the news? It's in the news now because there's a Netflix series coming out that actually, by the time this airs, might be out called Heist, and it's a series, and like an anthology series where they will take 2 or 3 episodes and kind of do little mini documentaries about real world heists. And one of them is a very famous food heist of Pappy Van Winkle bourbon.
Happy Van Winkle.
Pappy Van Winkle.
Pappy Van Winkle.
Yeah, which I always confuse with the guy in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, but that's Pappy O'Daniels. This is Pappy Van Winkle bourbon, which is very expensive, very fancy bourbon, as most bourbon tends to be. And somebody stole a whole ton of it.
An actual ton this time, or is it 21 tons?
I don't actually know by weight how much bourbon they stole, but it was a lot, and it is part of this documentary series. And so if you love food heists as much as me, go watch it.
And it's like on Netflix, you said?
Yeah, it's a Netflix series called Heist.
Heist.
And I'm sure the other episodes will be cool too, but the one about the food is the exciting one.
Well, I won't. Have you watched it?
No, because not out yet at time of recording.
I think we want a report from Dan after you watch this.
After I've watched it, I will let you know if it is as good as it is in my dreams.
All right. Well, today on this episode of Brandon is Wrong on the Internet, we had this last week, our episode, the last 2 weeks were our episodes on underrated films.
Yes.
That came out, and there were lots of comments in the comment sections about these. We appreciate you guys. Adam, which one in this latest podcast, which one of us turned out to have worse taste? It's me, isn't it? He put in the poll who has worse taste.
Well, yeah, but the poll just barely went up this morning. So
yeah, it could. That one's going to be in the comments, so I would actually have to tabulate that one. So next week might be a better time when more people have been able to
that one's in the comments? That one they can't vote on it?
Well, I do the titles in the poll.
And you can't attach multiple questions.
Can't do two. And in the actual podcast, you said,
man, someday
let us know.
Computer technology will advance to the point where we can attach 2 polls.
2 polls, 2 questions to
same
social media
episode.
posts. All right. So we don't know who has worse taste yet.
I think clearly I have worse taste.
Because I read
hate
that
Baby Driver.
I read that comment section, and everyone was talking about how great a movie Mom and Dad Save the World is. And there were not, let's say, many comments about my weird Odenkirk dub movie.
Yeah, you did not have many, if any, defenders of Kung Pao. On the other hand, you do have a lot of defenders who love Speed Racer.
Yes, well, there is that. I mean, that's just an objective fact.
Still
Speed Racer is awesome.
Up in the air.
Kung Pao is the one that I know is my bad taste. But these ones, this is gonna be even better because you know how last week you talked about how you don't like to complain about things on the internet and you like to be,
I like to be generally positive and lift things up.
Yes. And today we're going to talk about movies that Brandon doesn't think deserve their Rotten Tomatoes scores that are high.
You think that they are not nearly as good as Rotten Tomatoes thinks they are.
Yeah,
and these are comparisons, I assume, specifically to the critic score, not the audience score.
Critic score, yes. And let's do a couple of caveats here.
Okay.
First off, we use Rotten Tomatoes just because it is a good aggregate score.
Mm-hmm.
Rotten Tomatoes certainly has its flaws. And one of the big flaws of Rotten Tomatoes is that in a lot of the ways, like the same way that actually sometimes happens with the Hugo Awards. My editor explained this to me. Like, if a lot of people like a thing
without loving it,
it will still get a high Rotten Tomatoes score, and it actually has a better chance because of the way the Hugos work of winning a Hugo. Then if half the people love it as their favorite thing and half of them hate it, and the same thing on Rotten Tomatoes. In that case, that movie gets a score of 50%, and yet the half that really like it, really, really, really like it, and the half that don't like it really don't. And so that is one of the problems with this. But I have picked movies that I think, in general, it seems that people like way more than I like. And this is not just one of them might be a very popular decision. I think that the other 5, because I actually had 6, are not going to be very
All
popular
right.
decisions.
Well, let's hear them.
Yeah.
I actually.
No. I have caveat number 2.
Oh,
So
you have another caveat?
And then I'll give caveat number 2.
Well, I was just gonna say, I can't guarantee that we will have a second episode on this topic where Dan gripes about movies he hates. Because again, I like liking things. I don't know how negative I want to get, except about Baby Driver, which is dumb.
So caveat number 2 is about, I generally don't rant about things I dislike also. In fact, my you go to my Goodreads page, it is all 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
And the reason for this being that, particularly in the book world, authors do not need me trashing their book, right? If I don't like a book, I just probably won't finish it. And there's, like, I'm not a professional critic. Let the professional critics have that. Having Brandon, like, with my status in the field, come out against a sci-fi fantasy book, it gives undue weight to my opinion by the amount of audience and fandom that I have.
Yeah.
And it unfairly treats a new writer by lending that weight behind my dislike.
Yes.
I don't have that fear with movies, right? Because my voice is tiny in the movie community.
And if you come out and poop all over a movie,
Yeah.
it's not going to hurt it.
And the other thing is that I kind of wanted to say is, like, some people who work on some of these films are people I know, right? So I don't want to trash them.
Yeah.
I want to say, I just do not think this piece of art turned out. And that happens. My friends write art where I'm like, I just didn't like that. It happens all the time. We don't talk about it much. We won't talk about it much on this podcast. Because again, with books, we don't want to be like, oh, here's the worst book that, such and such. Here's the worst arc of this comic by a friend that makes comics. It's not gonna. It's not useful.
There's no point to that.
But people did ask for this, and I thought, I think it's interesting to talk about, and so theoretically, this will send us down some interesting lanes of not just griping about things, but just talking about.
Awesome. Okay.
And so the first one I picked specifically so we can talk a little bit more about the nature of criticism, because number 6, overrated movie on my list, Snow White.
Snow White from Disney?
Yes. It's not that good.
What is wrong with you?
It's not that good.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. It's a marvelous technical achievement for its time. So the question is, how many points do you give something for being a marvelous technological achievement for its time, when it compares, in my opinion, unfavorably to the other Disney movies that came out after it?
Oh man, well now I just want to rank Disney princess movies.
Yes. Like, I would put Snow White probably last place on
worse
my ranking.
Than Sleeping Beauty?
Yeah. Sleeping Beauty's got a dragon.
Yeah, but it's dumb.
It's got an awesome villain.
Okay. So does Snow White.
No, she's not
fantastic.
That
she is the most evil, straight up evil villain that's ever been in a Disney princess movie.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe Jafar beats her.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. The voice of Snow White drives me up the wall. I just cannot take it, right? It is...
okay, I won't argue with that one.
Just can't take it. The dwarves are kind of annoying, right?
They're not.
Yeah,
cute.
they are.
The thing about Snow White is that it is the first feature-length animation ever, and so it is constructed as a series of shorts strung together into a narrative. And I will grant you that narrative technology has advanced significantly since then. I don't think that's a knock against the movie, and so I still enjoy it.
Here's the discussion. How many points do you give to that? Like, when I watched Citizen Kane, I was still blown away by the narrative, the filmmaking, the shots, and the storytelling.
Yeah.
When I watched Snow White, I'm like, well, this was really good for the first one. I never want to watch this again.
Oh, no. You can find just as much filmmaking prowess in that as you can in Citizen Kane.
It's just all done better everywhere else.
The way that they structured everything, the way that they did the cute little stuff.
The structure
works.
Is kind of boring. It just is. What kind of protagonist is Snow White? She's useless.
She is useless, but so was Sleeping Beauty, and so was Alice in Wonderland. So was most of the early Disney stuff.
I'm going to rank most of those lower than the ones where they're not, right? Like, I like the Disney Renaissance princesses a lot more.
Disney Renaissance includes Ariel, who is, I would argue, just as useless
No,
as Snow
she's
White.
not. She's not, though.
She doesn't ever really protag for herself.
She protags a ton. She makes decisions. She goes and does things. She
doesn't solve her own problem in the end.
What? Because Eric drives a
Because
spear.
Eric is the one that does it.
Well, yes, she tries. She protags. She fails. Yes.
Maybe.
Actually, you need to watch Lindsay Ellis's Little Mermaid essay.
I think I've seen it.
Defends Little Mermaid quite well, more than I would, because Little Mermaid is the weakest of the. So, man, here's a tangent. Is Little Mermaid worse than Hunchback of Notre Dame?
No.
Okay.
Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Mm-hmm.
for my money, is the best score, the best collection of songs.
Okay.
For a Disney movie.
I wouldn't argue that it's bad.
Yeah.
So,
and that's mostly because it's Stephen Schwartz just
Mhm.
hitting it out of the friggin' park.
Hunchback of Notre Dame is the most daring of them.
Yeah. It's also at the same time the most pandering.
Yes. And that's the big problem with it.
It is trying to be daring while it is also trying to toe the line and be as traditional and acceptable as possible.
If it hadn't done that, it would be a great film. As it is, I think it's a bit of a disaster. Parts of it are awesome. You talk about an evil villain.
Yeah. Now, the thing I love about Hunchback is that the stage version of it gets rid of all the stupid stuff,
man,
and is by all accounts brilliant and emotional and powerful without the nonsense that they kind
Jason
of
Alexander
into the thing.
Like, he ruins that film so much for me.
I wouldn't put it on his shoulders.
No, it's not his
because
fault.
it's all three of the gargoyles, but
it's the casting choice, right? And the writing choice. It's definitely not that Jason Alexander is bad at what he does. They hired Jason Alexander to be Jason Alexander in that film, and he delivered a good performance as Jason Alexander.
I mean, really, they hired Jason Alexander in that film to be Nathan, what's his name, in Lion King. They wanted Timon and Pumbaa.
Yep. Nathan. Oh, now I can't.
Nathan Hale, Nathan Fields, Nathan. I mean, everyone knows this guy.
Yeah, from
He's one
producers.
of the most famous
Nathan
actors of all time. Nathan Fillion.
No,
Nathan.
Different Nathan.
Nathan Lane.
Nathan Lane.
Did I say Nathan Lane?
No, you got
Dang
Hale.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nathan Lane. They wanted
Anyway.
Nathan Lane, or they wanted from Hercules.
Oh, the little
Danny DeVito. They wanted that, right? That's they wanted that role. And then they picked a story to put him into, which has too many real world analogs and deep, powerful themes that you need to deal with. A villain who is essentially a clergyman wrestling with his forbidden love and lust over a minority woman who is being oppressed by society, while a disfigured person with disabilities is.
And on the one hand, you can absolutely 100% understand the executive's decision to be like, this is too dark. Let's add some funny to it.
Yep.
And
that,
on the other
really
hand,
worked in the Black Cauldron.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that anything worked in the Black Cauldron. On the other hand, if you just want something for kids, you shouldn't have done Hunchback in the first place. Like it was a horrific choice from the get-go. Hunchback is one of my favorite novels, and there's not a single happy thing in that entire story. And in fact, a faithful adaptation has never been made because they always try to give it a happy ending.
Yep.
Whether they have Esmeralda end up with, the captain, or with the thief, or with the hunchback, or she just goes off and is happy on her own. They're always trying to give it something happy. The ending of the book is that somebody finds in a mass grave her skeleton and a hunchbacked skeleton hugging her because he crawled in there after she was hung and starved to death. Like, it's a dark story. And no one has ever had the guts to, do it straight.
So you heard it here. Dan wants you to make a straight adaptation of Hunchback.
Well, 100%.
Yeah,
If somebody
I actually
makes a
agree.
faithful to the book adaptation of Hunchback of Notre Dame, I will lend you whatever artistic or social power I have to make that happen.
But let me put you on the spot here then.
Okay.
Would you rank Snow White above every other Disney animated film? Because it is on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ranked above every other
Yes.
Disney animated film.
None of the others made the top 100, and Snow White is
Really?
like in the top 10.
No, and that is the nostalgia and the history factors bumping it up. I do think that it is, without question, a monumental masterpiece of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, I do have to admit, plenty of other Disney princess movies have been better. I would say Tangled and Moana, off the top of my head, are both better movies.
I love Tangled. I actually wrote half of a video essay or a whole video essay on Tangled and didn't actually release it because we were waiting for this other one to come out. I actually think I wrote the whole thing. Yeah, we'll have to look at it. I wrote a video essay on how awesome Tangled is.
I would probably put Tangled as my very favorite Disney princess movie, although I would say Moana is my favorite Disney princess, if that is a meaningful distinction I can make.
Okay, yeah, you can. I mean, Moana has such good music. Like, it's the first Disney film since the Renaissance that I have downloaded the music and just listened to it. Lin-Manuel Miranda is just amazing, and I really like it.
And that surprises me because the big love song in Tangled is one of my favorite Disney songs ever.
All right, are we ready to move on from this
guess
tragedy?
We'll move on. You're still wrong.
It's I think that's probably the most controversial.
That's the most controversial. So before we move on, I'm going to ask, because I think I agree that it is not, the absolute like 100% or whatever it is on Rotten Tomatoes. Where would you put it?
Where would I put it? So the question is, do I remove if this came out today in the theaters, no other context, and it came out right now? I don't know. I'd probably 50%. Like, I probably wouldn't enjoy going to it. It's not a tragedy like, the Emoji Movie or something, but like, am I going to sit in this movie with my children? Are they going to enjoy it? Am I going to enjoy this? And we're going to go there for whatever runtime it is. It's probably not even fully 90 minutes. I guess
it's like an hour.
And are we just going to be bored out of our skulls and have this shrill voice in our ears and be like, why does the music sound so bad?
If Snow White were released today without any context, it is the voice of Snow White that would kill it.
Like, and
more
I think
than anything else.
If you release Citizen Kane right now today, it would still be acclaimed as a great film.
You think?
With no other context, yeah. I sincerely think that.
Probably because it's in black and white and critics love that.
Yes, they do love that. The Lighthouse proves that, but yeah. All right.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's see what other bad opinions you have.
Is going to be controversial, but not on the same level. Number 5, what about Bob?
No, I'll totally agree. That's not a good movie.
84%.
Yeah.
On Rotten Tomatoes.
It does not deserve an 84%.
I hate the movie. Now, part of my hate is emotional, right? Now, if we take the emotional aspect out, I still think it's kind of a mediocre film. The part that pushes me down is I cannot watch that film and empathize with Bill Murray. I have to be. I had his name in my mouth just a second before I said Bill Murray.
It is
Richard Dreyfuss. I have to be Richard Dreyfuss in that film. I watched that film about a home invasion, essentially, by this con artist turning a man mad and taking his family away from him. And it is horrifying, and the film is playing it for laughs.
Yeah.
Now, on that regard, it is a piece of art that has provoked a powerful emotional response to me. And I bet if the filmmakers were here, they'd be like, we expected some people to have that response, and that is part of the art we're creating. And in that case, good job, right?
Yeah.
You have created a Freddy Got Fingered style piece of discomforting art that is nauseating to watch, and good on you. I do not like this film.
I don't like the entire genre. Stuff like Freddy Got Fingered or Meet the Parents.
Yep.
Anything, even The Office, I could never get into because it just relies on annoying people being annoying.
Yeah.
The Office is more about kind of taking awkwardness to an artistic level rather than annoyance. but I don't have time for that. Like, one thing that I always try to teach when I am teaching, writing classes is nobody has to read your book. No one's going to read it just because you wrote it, except maybe your mom. Everybody else, you have to give them a reason to invite these characters into your head. And what about Bob simply doesn't have a reason outside of, yay, Bill Murray, I'll give this a shot? No, you make it 10 or 20 minutes into the movie before you're just, I don't want him in my head anymore.
I
He's
was
kicked out.
forced to watch it through all the way once by forced meaning I was in a social setting and it's like walking out would have been awkward. But every other time someone has said, give it another try, I last like you said, 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, I just cannot take this. Can we turn this off and do something else? I am aggressively uncomfortable for this poor other character and want nothing more to do with this film.
Yeah. Well, and the one redeeming feature of it is, Richard Dreyfuss does a good job as the straight man, and he's always likable in everything he's in. Bill Murray, you want to love it because you love Bill Murray.
Yep.
Every other movie he's made, including the bad ones like Meatballs, those are still better than What About Bob?
Yeah. Bill Murray's an interesting kind of case study, right? Like, in being, cultivating this air of jerkiness that makes him lovable as a person, which is kind of weird because I wonder if, number one, that's a product of its time. Can you still cultivate an air of jerkiness and have people be like, oh, he's such a lovable jerk? Because everyone knows Bill Murray, on the set of Ghostbusters, he's like, no, you can't put that puff stuff on me. And he's like, you can put a little bit in my hair, which is why in the scene, maybe this is apocryphal, but this is the image that he's cultivated for himself, right? Is you see Dan Aykroyd there just swimming in the stuff. And next to him is Bill Murray, who's barely been touched because he just doesn't want to put the crap on. And then the second movie, he's like, no, I'm not wearing a stupid costume. I'm gonna wear my day clothes. And he's walking around in, normal clothes when the rest are in their ghost busting outfits because he just isn't gonna do it.
Well, see, I've always assumed that's apocryphal because he gets fully and totally slimed halfway through the movie.
Yes.
And so he's clearly not averse to being abused a little bit by the production design. I think it was just a really funny joke that they're all completely slathered in marshmallow cream, and then he's the last one.
And it is great. All of these things enhance it.
Yeah.
And my knowledge of these behind the things, all the stories, and again, this is probably cultivated, right? But to get Bill Murray to do something, listen to the stories that producers tell in Hollywood. He has a voicemail system that you don't know if he's going to check. Your job is to call, offer him a project, and then wait. And if he wants to do it, he will show up. Right? A lot of times they'll say, we cast Bill Murray in this. And then we had to see if he actually showed up at set because you never know if Bill is actually going to show up or not.
Yeah.
And so many stories about him hating this film or disliking working on this film or being difficult to work with.
Part of that I really admire because, now that he is old enough and famous enough that he can get away with that kind of garbage, he is picking some really weird stuff to involve himself in
for the last 20 years.
And
that's
he's
basically,
doing, sometimes he'll do a big thing like Zombieland, and then sometimes he'll do some kid's student film.
Yeah.
Just because he finds it interesting or fun. I think that's kind of neat.
There's some story about how he did the Garfield films because of some mistake in a contract or something. And again, I think this is all in air, but this is the same sort of air that Harlan Ellison had in the science fiction community. And it eventually just blew up on him because his behavior was just not okay.
Well, and he was legitimately horrible.
Yes,
to
he was.
A lot of people.
But that was the selling point, right? He's mean. Therefore, it's his persona, and he played it up, and it became part of it. And it was a thing I feel like you could do in a different era, and maybe you still can. You can be known as the curmudgeonly mean one, and people will.
There
love
are
you for
definitely YouTubers who are famous for being jerks.
That's true.
But I don't know if they're lovable jerks.
Yeah.
And that might just be a generational gap where kids these days in their YouTube videos. I don't know.
I will say, Bill Murray, as you said, I've never seen a bad performance. Anytime he's on screen, I'm acknowledging that he's good at what he's doing, even though I absolutely hate this movie.
What about Bob?
All right. Number 4, we're counting up from 6.
Counting
5,
up
4.
from 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 4.
So wait, when we get to number
Num-
1, is that going to be the most? The
this
one you
is
think
the one
deserves?
that I dislike the most, right?
Okay.
So Snow White, like maybe I was a little too much, and like I think it deserves a 50. It probably doesn't, right? Because I will accept historical context. I don't think it's better than every other Disney animated film ever made. I don't think it deserves a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, but in historical context, it does.
I mean,
right?
not to rehash Snow White again, but I do need to say it is visually gorgeous.
It is.
The style,
It
the
is
kind
pretty.
of old German cottage look. They hit that one out of the park.
And it's pretty amazing. They nailed that with the first try.
Yeah.
Right? That it has a unique visual style. Like a lot of the stuff that I'll say about Snow White, I'm like, for a first try, this is a 98% movie, right?
For a first try.
Yeah, it's amazing they did as well as they did on the first try. It's amazing that the full-length feature film isn't Steamboat Willie, but 60 minutes of whistling and things like that. Instead, it does have a narrative. And instead, it's it is a film.
And now I want to see the 90-minute Steamboat Willie.
Yeah. So, and what about Bob? It is low on the list, which means it's good, because I acknowledge they were trying to do this to me. And that artistic decision was a deliberate one. It's a very good example of the art that it's making. I don't think it deserves an 84%.
Yeah.
I think, a very good is probably too strong. It is an example that works of what they're trying to do.
I did a huge blog of Babylon 5.
Uh-huh.
Because I never watched Babylon 5 when it first came out, even though I would have been like right target audience for it. And for whatever reason, never watched it. And I don't know why. So a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to watch Babylon 5 and I'm going to make a blog as I watch it and, write down my thoughts about every episode.
Yep.
And I made it up through about halfway through season 4, which is, really where it goes off the rails.
Yep.
Before I finally gave up. And the reason was I could tell this is something that is very good and it is what it is trying to be. And it's just not for me. And I think that's kind of where both of us probably are with What About Bob?
Yeah.
Because there are people who love it for what it is. It's just not us.
It might not deserve to be on this list. It might deserve its score just for the people, right? I'm just trying to make discussion. Though number 4 breaks my heart. Actually, the rest of these all break my heart. Number 4 breaks my heart the most.
All right, well, let's hear it.
Incredibles 2.
Incredibles 2 was so bad.
It was really bad. It's a 93%. It was number 72 on the list that I pulled up that had kind of normalized the rating. So 100% with 5 reviews did not get the number 1 spot. The number of ratings that a thing had influences where it falls on the list, if that makes sense. And otherwise, you just have a bunch of indie films that have 5 ratings that are at 100% at the top. And so some of mine aren't on that list. That's just where I started. But it's number 72, according to Rotten Tomatoes, whatever algorithm, best movie of all time.
Incredibles 2?
Yes.
But it's so bad. The story is incoherent. It doesn't hold together. It falls into ridiculous cliches like the bumbling father, long after the point where he has already figured out how to do everything that he's suddenly bad at.
Yes.
And just nothing about it works. Those
like the cliches were part of what really bothered me, right?
Yeah.
Character regression, taking them and you have to have new conflicts for a sequel. I get it, but they basically told the first story again worse with a swap of the characters, and they made Mr. Incredible bumbling. They didn't seem to have any idea what type of story they wanted to tell, despite having the same basic structure as the first one. It was so bad. It breaks my heart because I really like Brad Bird. He made my favorite Pixar film, which we've talked about, Ratatouille. Haven't we?
See, no, I don't think we've talked about that because Ratatouille is one of the worst Pixar movies.
Oh, it's my favorite.
It's so dumb.
It's
worse than Incredibles 2.
It's worse than Incredibles 2?
It's worse than Cars 2.
No. How How can you say Ratatouille is worse than those two?
Because it's so bad.
What's bad about it?
It has one good scene, and it's just the guy at the end reading his review.
That scene is genius.
That scene is genius.
And it's better than that. The scene where he takes the bite and is zoomed into his childhood is genius.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that scene. It's two scenes.
I consider that all the same scene.
That is genius. The guy having to cook with a rat pulling his hair is legitimately great physical comedy.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's just, we couldn't figure out what movie to do this year. So how about let's do something with a rat?
It is
in
about
a
a person who is passionate about something, explaining their passion in an excellent way. And the message is great because a lot of times we talk about this message. This is a good message. We say you can do whatever you want to, and we're lying. I did a whole video essay on this. You can't do whatever you want to. Raw personal talent plays a big role in doing a lot of things. And you know how you were born. If you're not above a certain height, you're not going to be playing professional basketball. You can't do whatever you want to do. And this movie is saying you can't do whatever you want to do, but a person who can do anything can come from any walk of life. And that is a really great nuanced take on the you can do anything.
Yeah, but let's go back to Ebert. It doesn't matter what a movie's about. It matters how it's about it.
Yeah.
You can have the best moral ever, and that doesn't make it a good movie.
Yeah, but if the moral comes out to me and it never really it doesn't beat you over the head with it, and the moral kind of as you're watching, you're like, I get this. I understand the message just on its own. That's good filmmaking. The fact that I like the scene where what's his name? It's not Fettuccine, the kid.
The kid is
Linguini.
Fettuccine. Oh,
no,
Linguini. Okay.
When Linguini and Remy are communicating, but they can't talk, and you understand, oh, we see here that rats can understand human language, but rats can't speak it. Without ever saying that, with the scene where the rat doesn't speak, it's brilliant filmmaking. It's show, don't tell, and it's done really, really well. That is really good. Janine Garofalo is a wonderful actor. She does a smashingly good job in that. And I love her.
Who is she? Is she the
sorry
female
to be
chef?
rude, but we are French. Is just such a great line.
It
makes me smile.
Astonishing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to believe that you like Ratatouille because I know a lot of people love Ratatouille.
Mm-hmm.
You're all wrong, but I know that it happens. It's astonishing to me that it would be your favorite Pixar movie.
It's great
because I dislike it so much.
There's nothing wrong with that movie.
I'll tell you, I do like that one better than Up, though.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Also, I really like Up.
Up is another one. It's got one good scene, and it's the first 15 minutes, and everything after that is so boring.
Here's the thing. The first 15 minutes are better than the rest of the film. I think we talked about this.
We probably did.
Legit are better than the rest of the film, but there's lots of great stuff in that film. And so I disagree with you there. We could rant on this forever. We'll have to do Pixar films thing.
We should.
But Incredibles 2, we both agree.
Incredibles 2.
Weak film by an excellent filmmaker. Do you hate The Iron Giant? Do you have no soul?
I actually really love The Iron Giant.
Okay. Well, you do like good Brad Bird films then in at least one case.
And the first Incredibles is fantastic. The thing about Incredibles 2 is that you know instantly how bad it's going to be because it starts with at least when I saw it in the theater, the voice actors came out.
Coming on and apologizing.
And they're like, hey, we've been wanting to do this for like 12 years and now we finally got a chance to. And I'm thinking, every little kid in the audience could not possibly care less about who you are or how old you are or how long you've wanted to finally make this late sequel. The fact that they thought that was a good thing to put at the front of their movie shows that they simply did not know what kind of movie they were making.
Not watch the rest of the movie without being reminded that the actors have aged 15 years or 12 years more than the characters. And that was just stuck in my head because you don't have the voice actors come on stage before the characters because you will cement in your head the actor instead of the character. One of the geniuses of animation is that they disappear into the role.
Yeah.
And it's part of the problem with some of the early DreamWorks films is they didn't. And
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to say that little live action introduction ruined the movie for me. I just think it is emblematic of the fact that they made a vast string of poor decisions while making that movie.
All right. We agree on that one, even though I am baffled by your dislike of the cute rat making pasta. Let's go on to number 3, another heartbreaking one. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
This is at 77%, so it's not like super high. But this is just a bad film.
It's not as bad as I think people say it is. It's definitely the weakest one. I mean, there's no question there, and it definitely has a lot of really stupid stuff in it. I am not going to argue. And so I agree with you.
Would you put it at a 77%?
At a 77? I don't know. I might.
Yeah.
That still feels high. Honestly, I'm surprised it's that high because everyone hated it when it came out.
I think that they liked it, but then it wore off. I remember watching that film and disliking it the whole time. Now, I did not have that experience with the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. I remember at least the first one going to it and coming out and being like, yeah, it was pretty good, right, guys? That was fun. That was action-packed and things like that. We went to that together.
Yeah, we did.
I remember
camped out like 24 hours for tickets.
Yes. I remember playing cards in the line. I remember
played Magic in the line at Trolley Corners.
Yes.
In Salt Lake City.
But I remember coming out of this one being like, oh no, it was bad. It was bad. It was so bad. And just feeling sick that it was.
The thing is, there are bits of it that I really like.
Yeah, what are the bits you like?
Cate Blanchett, I think, is great in everything.
Okay.
And her as evil Soviet sorceress totally worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing Marion again made me happy.
I agree with that.
There were even bits of Shia LaBeouf, and he got a lot of flack for you're no Harrison Ford. Of course he's not Harrison Ford.
No.
But there were bits of him that kind of worked for me.
So there is, in my opinion, there's one brilliant scene. And that's a scene where Harrison Ford and him, Indiana Jones and Mutt are at dinner, and they're trying he's trying to get a drink, and Harrison Ford keeps stealing it from him back and forth. There's a lot of...
Is that in the diner?
Yeah, in the diner. There's a lot of nuance in the scene. There's a lot of really good acting. They're playing off of each other. It's not an over-the-top action scene, and it just works. And it's like Spielberg being what I love about Spielberg.
Well, and the scene immediately following that is a motorcycle chase, which is the best action scene in the show, I think.
Yes, it is.
Do a motorcycle chase through whatever university he works in.
Yes. Much better than he sword fights monkeys while standing between two Jeeps going through the jungle.
Yes.
Which was painfully bad.
It was. The decision to make Mutt both a greaser and a prep school dude with fencing background was clearly terrible. However, my main defense of Crystal Skull, and I'm still, let's be clear, I'm not saying it's a good movie.
Okay.
I'm just saying it's better than people give it credit for. So many people hate the aliens in it. I love that. Because one of the oldest, the instant that European settlers showed up in the New World and started uncovering all this stuff, they were already hundreds of years ago talking about aliens. Aliens as an explanation for pyramids has been around forever. All of this stuff is not just weird crap that Spielberg pulled out of his butt. It's real conspiracy theories that exist all over. And I really enjoyed seeing that brought out.
I was okay with the Cold War setting as an update to talk about some good things about the film. It was hard, though, because we have been socially and morally acclimatized to the idea of Nazis as disposable bad guys that you do not have to feel bad killing, right? And I'm kind of on board for this, right? It is hard for me to accept the Russians in the same way, having grown up during the Cold War, and even during the Cold War, seeing how overly scared we were of people who were too similar to us to really fear. Like that's the theme of the Cold War is we are much more similar than we are different, despite a single ideological difference.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to accept mustache twirling communists in the same way I can accept mustache twirling Nazis.
Yeah. Well, and also when you take the Nazis and the Jewish artifacts away, the entire moral core of the story falls out.
Yes.
And it no longer has a theme anymore. Like they could have gone for some kind of Red Scare theme. They could have gone for something about identity. They kind of leaned into this a little bit because there's 2 or 3 like double, triple crosses where the guy you thought was your friend is actually a communist, who's actually your friend, who's actually. They could have leaned into that more and found a theme that worked, and they didn't. Yep. And that's definitely missing from it.
And this is just a much smaller thing, but the fridge really bothered me at the beginning. Like it's endemic, like you said, of the previous, like the Incredibles, that starting off on the wrong foot was just a sign. That was a sign for me. Indiana Jones does ridiculous things, but if you look back at like Indiana Jones, the first one, like what makes it work in part is that you don't stop believing he could do this, right? Yeah. It feels very grounded for how ridiculous it is. And Indiana Jones remaining grounded when crazy stuff is happening around him is part of what made those films work. He's taking it very seriously. And when he gets blown up and thrown a mile by a nuke and then stumbles out of it, he's like, whoa, that was a thing.
Yeah. Stumbles out and then runs off.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't need recovery time.
Yes.
I'm going to put up the truck scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark as the single greatest action scene of all time.
Okay. Didn't you already have a single greatest action scene?
Yeah, and it was this one.
Okay.
It's the truck.
Okay.
And that one works because, as you say, it's grounded. It's clearly superhuman, but it feels real because he has to work for it.
Yep.
He gets punched. He gets knocked off of things. It is hard. He is fallible. And the biggest problem with the fridge is that he is not.
Yep. He's now invincible. That thing can kill Indiana Jones. Oh, well. And plus, as I recall, I've only seen the movie, once and then clips. No Gimli. I was waiting for Gimli, and I got no Gimli.
That's why they've got the Scottish dude.
They've got like a replacement Gimli, and I'm like, John Rhys Davies. No. I want my John Rhys Davies. You can bring back Marion. One of my favorite lines from film of all time is he gets lost in his own museum, which is so metaphorically powerful and potent that I love it. And yeah, all right, that's a little thing too.
Yeah.
All right, we're to my top 2.
Okay.
My top 2.
Let's hear it.
I'm going to give you number 2, and then I'm going to have you, after we talk about it, try to guess number 1.
Try to guess number 1.
Number 2, because I should have mentioned before, I'm not going with Oscar winners and things on this. I think we may do sometime where it's like the really snooty high-class films that maybe got too much. But I looked through like the Oscar winners, and all the ones I've seen that like one, I'm like, yeah, that might not be quite as good as the other one, but it's still a really good movie, right?
Yeah.
It was hard to be like, oh, this one has a 94 but deserves a 90. And this other film, it's like Shakespeare in Love. Did Shakespeare in Love deserve to win? We can talk about it in another podcast. Maybe not, but it's a good film. Like, that is not a bad film. So, at least in my opinion. I'm doing blockbusters this time, if you couldn't
tell.
All
right, here we go.
All right. Magical Beasts and where to find them.
See, I haven't even seen this one.
78% on Rotten Tomatoes. This movie is terrible.
You know what? I don't have a lot to say about this, and it's in large part because I actually didn't like most of the Harry Potter movies. I got as far as halfway through 4 and realized, yep, these are not for me.
Which
and
is totally
I've seen
fine.
clips of 5, and I've seen trailers for the rest of them. And so by the time we got to Magical Beasts and Where to Find Them, I was long done with the Harry Potter cinematic universe.
So I am fond of all the Harry Potter films. I think 3 is an actively good film.
Yes.
I think 1 and 2 are bad. But what they needed to be bad, if this makes sense. Like, I don't know that I would go and change them. because they needed to play it really safe with these. I felt like, but they're bad as adaptations because they film the book scene by scene and they don't take a lot of risks.
Yeah.
And 3's where the books got too big to be able to take those risks, and you end up with the best film of the lot, in my opinion.
Well, and the best director, which I think more than anything else is why that worked.
That makes a big difference. But Harry Potter films have a lot going for them beyond that. The casting was great.
Casting was phenomenal. The production design was incredible.
Finding 3 kid actors who all really solidly nailed their roles at their ages and then just grew up into being pretty good actors. Like
I wish we saw more Rupert Grint in the world because he's the one who doesn't have the career the other ones have.
Right. And he might be the best actor of the 3.
I think you might be right.
But
I don't know.
Yeah.
Radcliffe is
good.
Genuinely great.
I mean, they're all good. They're all good actors. And but they did do Ron dirty. That's a running theme in the movies that Harry Potter fans have pointed out, and I only noticed once some bigger Harry Potter fans than me pointed it out. If you watch the films, they give a lot of the best lines that he had to other characters, and basically turn him into comic relief. And the bumbling sidekick, which they do Ron a bit dirty, but all in all, I like the films. I like the later ones too. 3 is my favorite, but I think 4 through 7 and 8 have their things to recommend them, and the only ones I think that are weak are 1 and 2. But then we get to Fantastic Beasts and Fantastic Beasts. So I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of films that I've just stopped watching.
Okay.
When I had paid for it, right? And things like I'm not counting, I'm flipping through the channels and I land on something and then leave. I'm talking about movies that I go actively to see and then just leave.
So did you walk out of a theater?
So it was a home theater.
Buy it on Prime.
Yeah,
and then
it was a home theater. And we, Emily and I were both watching it, and we got about a half hour in, and we looked at each other and we're like, "This is just dreadful. Can we do anything else?" And so we just turned it off.
Wow.
Now it's interesting because again, I think the actor nailed the part. I think the part was just written very poorly.
The kid.
No, the Fantastic Beasts is about a monster hunter essentially.
Yeah.
But a good monster. He keeps these little pets and things. And he's an adult. He's not a kid.
I'm 44. I call him a kid.
Okay.
He's the one who was in like The Theory of Everything.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. He does a very good job, and I think he is playing it and written to be on the autism spectrum and doing a very good, subtle job of that, and things like this. But the movie is boring, just terribly boring. The pacing is dreadful, and the worst sin of all is it removes the art from and whimsy from the Harry Potter universe. Like it's so dull. Everything is flat. There's like the scenes are shot in this flat, boring way, and they might be arguing that they're doing it because then the little monster things that'll be like sneaking out of his bag or something like that will be more on screen. But New York feels empty. It feels like lifeless. And it almost feels like they're doing it intentionally. Like, here's the magical wizarding world full of life and wonder, and here's dull, mundane world of just washed out colors. But the whole movie is taking place in the mundane world of washed out colors. The sound mixing is weird. It just feels flat and odd to me. Nothing feels alive on screen ever. And I mean, the worst thing is it's just horribly poorly written.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling wrote the script, and she's not a screenwriter. She did a dreadful job. It's really, really, really boring.
See, this is a case where you're punching up. Like, we're not going to bash other authors.
We're not going to bash, but
we can bash the best-selling author in the entire world.
We can.
One time she writes a bad thing.
Right. And the thing about it is that I can see so easily how you would do this because I consider myself a pretty good writer. I could see being like, well, I'm going to write the screenplay myself. And this is like a warning call. Like, I often use the metaphor like I am pretty good at writing epic fantasy books. I think that writing a screenplay might be like a famous basketball player deciding to play baseball. And this is, I think, what happened with J.K. Rowling. Like, she can write in the minor leagues when it comes to a screenplay. And I, don't know that I could do a better job than her, but you don't have to be able to do a better job than someone to criticize. That's not a valid argument against criticism. And
if you can like something without being able to do it yourself, you can also dislike something without being able to do it yourself.
And I think this, we can stop because you haven't read it, but I think this movie is just, it's baffling.
No, everything about it felt like a shameless cash grab from the beginning. And so it doesn't surprise me at all. And I should say it didn't surprise me when it came out and everyone hated it because...
Did they, though? It had a 77%. It got
77?
a sequel. Yeah. It did well enough to get a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, you could, poop in a Harry Potter-themed bucket and sell enough copies of it to get a sequel.
I know. People say this sequel is worse. I didn't get through the first film. I can't fathom this having a 78%. Because, like I said, it's just a misfire. And can you guess number one?
I don't know if I can guess number one.
Okay.
Because your list has been so bizarre so far because you've got movies on it I've never seen. You've got one of the most beloved movies of all time.
Yes, it does. I do.
So I'm not even going to
you don't have to. You don't have to.
Unless it's Baby Driver.
It's not Baby Driver. This one actually is super painful. It is all Star Wars movies after Return of the Jedi. Is that cheating?
Star Wars fans.
Is that cheating? I think that's cheating.
It might be cheating, but on the other hand, it is so hard to split up any of those movies.
Yeah.
Like anytime I put favorite movie on, doing a list of favorite movies, I never will pick one of the Star Wars movies.
Right.
It will be the whole original trilogy.
Right. Except I do think we maybe have violated that already in this podcast. But I will put a little asterisk next to The Force Awakens.
Okay.
If the trilogy had gone excellent places, The Force Awakens would be a good movie. It is a good movie.
It is a good movie. But you're right. The trilogy, and by J.J. Abrams' own admission, they didn't really have a plan.
Yeah.
Which is not his fault necessarily.
No, it's baffling they didn't have a plan.
It is.
It's
astonishing.
Mind-boggling. But then again, I can see how it would happen because this is a property that's a little different than a lot of the other ones. They didn't have a really, I think, solid plan for what are we going to do with Thor, right, in the MCU. And the third Thor movie is the strongest of the three by a large measure. This is because you can mostly make, in most series, even big series, independent films that work well together, and a good filmmaker can come on and build off of what's been given before, and then can turn it into a great sequel.
Yeah. Well, and also the nature of these more disconnected franchises like the MCU or James Bond or something like that, you only need to have a couple of touchstones.
Yeah.
And other than that, it can be a wholly original story with its own tone and its own feel. Star Wars, you can't do that.
Nope. They didn't realize that they were making an epic fantasy series without the books, right? As a guide. And it's like just trying to do that for Lord of the Rings and seeing what happens in the third one just would not work. They're all one continuous story. And that's what people want from Star Wars, is a trilogy that's a continuous story. Now, I know that the prequel movies have gained some unironic love from modern audiences after the ironic sort of love of it became a thing on the internet. And I think us being able to see the sequel trilogy and match the sequel trilogy kind of to the prequel trilogy, it has helped us see the things the prequel trilogy did well.
Yes. Being able to put, what I would essentially consider to be two pieces of fan fiction up against each other and say, well, what did this one do right? And what did this one do wrong? They both did a lot of things right, and they both did a lot of things wrong.
And those are inverted from one another.
Yeah, they are.
Mhm. Yeah.
One thing that, and I think I said this in the live stream that we did, I was on a panel once where a guy described the prequel trilogy as a good story poorly told.
Yeah.
And I think it is, not only is that very wise, but it makes for the very easy and, in my opinion, true flip side to say that the sequel trilogy is a poor story, very well told.
Yes.
It is exciting. It is thrilling. There's a lot of stuff about Rise of Skywalker that I felt was the wrong choice, but at the same time, it had absolutely incredible, indelible images.
Yep.
Like Palpatine hanging from this insectile thing in the
beautiful
cave. The scene where Rey hands Kylo a lightsaber, or it's the other way around.
Yeah. It's the best moment, I think, in the sequel series. Han Solo coming back and like Kylo's redemption worked.
Yeah, and I genuinely didn't think they were going to pull it off until the scene where it happened.
Yeah.
And late in the movie, you know, where he's kind of redeemed and he's coming to help Rey, there's a scene where he's fighting bad guys and he gives a smirk that is such a perfect Harrison Ford smirk. And that is the moment where instantly, despite how much I've hated him, I can see, oh my gosh, this is Han Solo's kid.
Yep.
And I love him instantly.
But you look at the sequel trilogy and you've got a first movie that leans a little too hard on what came before. Would have been forgivable if it had all kind of come together. Then you have a second movie that is an artistic rejection of the film that came before it.
Yes.
Doing really incredible things and some terrible ones mixed. A lot of 10s and a lot of 1s in that movie.
Yeah.
But giving us a very unsatisfying pairing to the first one. And then a third movie that should have been 5 hours long and been a Disney Plus show, where to make it work, they had to cut out too much of the character stuff.
Well, and when you say to make it work, what I would mean by that statement is it was an artistic rejection of the second movie.
Yes.
If it had been content to follow along where the second movie was headed, I think they could have done it in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
But because they were trying to retcon the entire second installment, you know, the first half hour of Rise of Skywalker is a previously on section that you would find at the beginning of a TV episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And
but all for stuff that we haven't actually seen.
Even the stuff I dislike in Rise of Skywalker, I have liked in book form before, like bringing Palpatine back. Bringing back Palpatine back has huge implications for the original trilogy, which I love.
Yes.
So to do it, you have to do it in a way that doesn't undermine that, and you can do that, but very hard to do, and you need a lot of space to tell that story. And so just I have not loved a Star Wars film since the original trilogy. And I know a lot of you listening are going to be like, oh, Brandon, you forgot Rogue One. I aggressively dislike Rogue One.
Yeah.
I'm one of the only people.
I didn't really like it either. I didn't hate it as much as you did.
Yeah.
I'm the one who hates Solo, which a lot of people absolutely adore. And I think, like, it literally put me to sleep. I could count on one hand the movies that have put me to sleep, and Solo's one of them. It was terrible.
I do like The Mandalorian more than you do. But I said, all the Star Wars movies. So that is my number one. It has been heart-wrenching for me as a storyteller to watch these things and see them uncanny valley get so close to being really good and then failing. And because of that, most of them are very high fresh rating. The only one that's not, I think, fresh is Rise of Skywalker on Rotten Tomatoes. One of the
Is that one not fresh?
No, I think it's like a 56% or something like that.
Interesting.
But I don't
see when I took my kids to see Rise of Skywalker, and that was their favorite one of the three. Like the lights were still coming up, and my son was already like, that's amazing. I love that. I don't care what anyone says. That was incredible. But I mean, the way he phrased it implies he'd already heard some garbage about it. So
yep,
maybe there were more people who disliked it.
So there you go. There's my list. We may or may not do a Dan list, as you've been indicating. This isn't something that you like as much as I like, or an idea that appeals to you as much as it appeals to me.
Yeah, I'm like Abed. I like liking things.
I think that is a good place to be, and I think it might be a good podcast title.
Ooh.